Cadbury is the closest thing the British chocolate aisle has ever had to a national institution. It is more than a brand. It is the purple of school tuck shops, the foil of Christmas selection boxes, the bar your nan kept in the cupboard, the egg you got every Easter. 200 years of British chocolate in one familiar wrapper. Fast forward to today, and the bar in your hand isn't quite what it used to be. The factory the company swore would stay open closed within months. The fair trade logo on the front is gone. The famous line about a glass and a half of milk in every bar has quietly vanished from the wrapper. The shell of a cream egg, once made of proper dairy milk chocolate, has been swapped for something the company simply calls a standard cocoa mix. And Cadbury itself, the proud Birmingham company built on Quaker values, is owned by an American snack conglomerate that runs it from headquarters thousands of miles away. This was not an accident. Most brands decline because the world moves on. Cadbury's fall was directly self-inflicted, decided in boardrooms, written into contracts, and signed off by executives who knew exactly what they were doing. This is the blueprint for that. If you want to ruin a beloved national brand, this is how they did it, step by step. This is how to ruin Cadbury. Step 1. Start with 200 years of trust, then sell it. You cannot ruin a brand that does not have anything worth ruining in the first place, so the foundation matters. To understand the fall, you have to understand just how high Cadbury once stood. The company was founded in 1824 by John Cadbury, a Quaker, in a small shop on Bull Street in Birmingham. The Quakers were not allowed into the universities or the professions of the day, so a generation of them went into business, and they brought their religion with them. Honesty, fair dealing, looking after the people who worked for you. By the time John's sons George and Richard had taken over the company, those values had been baked into how Cadbury operated, decades before the rest of British industry caught on. In 1879, George Cadbury did something almost no other industrialist of his era would have considered. He moved the entire factory out of Birmingham into the countryside, and around it he built a village, Bourneville, not a slum, not a row of back-to-backs, a proper village with cottages, schools, gardens, sports fields, almshouses for retired workers, and even a swimming bath. No pub, because the Cadburys were Quakers and didn't drink, but everything else a working family could want. The houses were sold or rented to ordinary workers at fair rates. The factory itself was built with high windows and clean working conditions decades before that was anything close to standard. It was a radical statement, made not in a speech but in bricks and mortar, that the people making the chocolate were as important as the chocolate itself, and that ethical foundation became the brand. Generations of British schoolchildren toured the factory and went home with their pockets full of free samples. Generations of British families associated the purple wrapper with that story. A wrapper, by the way, whose specific shade of purple Cadbury successfully trademarked in 1995 because it had become that recognizable. The cocoa was sourced more carefully than most. The workers were looked after. The company even ran funds for sickness, pensions and dental care decades before the state did. The taste was distinctively, recognizably Cadbury. And in 1905, the company launched the product that would define it, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, advertised with the line, "A glass and a half of fresh milk in every half-pound." That single sentence ran on the wrapper for over 100 years. It was the most famous food slogan in Britain. By the 1990s, Dairy Milk was the best-selling chocolate bar in the country, the default Christmas present, the default thank you gift, the bar in every corner shop in every village. The brand was, for all practical purposes, untouchable. For most of the 20th century, Cadbury was untouchable. It was the British Chocolate Company. And then, in the 2000s, something quiet happened. Cadbury, listed on the stock exchange, started to look attractive to people who saw its 2 centuries of brand equity not as a heritage to protect, but as an asset to extract. Step 2. Break the most public promise you have ever made. The first crack opened on the 3rd of October 2007. Cadbury, which by then had been split off from its drinks business and was running as a standalone confectionery company, announced that it would close its Somerdale factory in Keynsham, near Bristol. The factory was 75 years old. It had originally belonged to J.S. Fry and Sons, the chocolate maker Cadbury had merged with decades before. 500 jobs would go. Production of brands like Curly Wurly, Fudge, Turkish Delight, Fry's chocolate cream and Cadbury's mini eggs would move, partly to Bourneville, but partly and revealingly to a brand new factory Cadbury was building in Skarbimierz in Poland. That decision was unpopular, but it was Cadbury's own. What happened next is what turned it into a national scandal. In September 2009, the American food conglomerate Kraft launched a hostile takeover bid for Cadbury. It was a giant offering an enormous sum of money for a beloved British company, and the country was uneasy about it. Sensing the political weather, on the 7th of September 2009, Kraft's chairman and chief executive Irene Rosenfeld made a public statement aimed straight at British politicians, British workers and British shoppers. The exact wording is worth quoting because it is now part of the official record of Parliament. Our current plans contemplate that the UK would be a net beneficiary in terms of jobs. For example, we believe we would be in a position to continue to operate the Somerdale facility, which is currently planned to be closed, and to invest in Bourneville, thereby preserving UK manufacturing jobs. In plain English, vote our way, sell us your shares, let our takeover through, and we will save Somerdale. We will keep the factory open. We will protect the British jobs. The takeover was finalised in early February 2010. 1 week later, on the 9th of February 2010, Kraft announced that it would not be keeping Somerdale open after all. Rosenfeld now said it had become clear it was unrealistic to reverse the closure programme. 1 week. That is how long the promise that helped seal a £1 billion takeover survived after the deal went through. The reaction was furious. The trade union Unite called it a cruel manipulation and a cynical ploy to gain favour for the bid. Lord Mandelson, then the business secretary, said publicly that Rosenfeld would have known what was going to be announced a week before she announced it, and that the company had failed to deal honestly with him, with the workforce or with the government. 500 workers, many of whom had given their entire working lives to that factory, had been led to believe, by the new owner of their company, in a public statement during a government-scrutinised takeover bid, that their jobs might be saved. They were not. The public outcry went well beyond the workforce. The takeover had already been controversial. Britain genuinely cared about Cadbury in a way the financial markets had not anticipated. There were petitions. There were calls in Parliament for changes to the takeover code itself, to make it harder for foreign companies to hostile bid for British heritage firms in future. The government commissioned a review. The phrase "the Cadbury law" started getting used by politicians and journalists to describe the changes being suggested, but the deal had already gone through. Cadbury was sold, the horse had bolted, and the only debate left was about whether to fit a stronger lock to the empty stable. Most damning of all, the British Parliament itself opened an inquiry. The Business, Innovation and Skills Committee published its report in April 2010, and the wording is extraordinary. Parliament found that Kraft acted both irresponsibly and unwisely. It said the company had left itself open to the charge that either it was incompetent in its approach to the Somerdale factory, or that it used a cynical ploy to cast a positive light on Kraft during its takeover of Cadbury. The committee said it could neither prove nor discount either conclusion. That is Parliament on the record saying it cannot tell whether one of the largest food companies in the world was deeply incompetent or actively dishonest in its public dealings with the British people. And here is the bit nobody in Britain knew at the time, but that Parliament dug up. Kraft had done this exact thing before. In 1993, Kraft had acquired Terry's of York, another beloved British chocolate maker. The same kind of public reassurances had been given, and in 2005, the York factory was closed. Production was moved, of all places, to Poland. The same playbook, run a decade earlier, and almost nobody had remembered. Step 3, strip the values out while keeping the wrapper. You cannot ruin a brand all at once, people notice, so you do it quietly, one piece at a time, leaving the colours and the logos and the typeface looking exactly as they always have. In 2010, the same year the takeover went through, the famous slogan, "A glass and a half of fresh milk in every half pound," was removed from dairy milk wrappers in the UK. The line had been on the bar for over 100 years. The reason given was that it no longer aligned with European food labelling regulations. The precise milk content claim could no longer be made in the way it once had. Whatever the technical justification, the effect was symbolic. The sentence that had defined Cadbury dairy milk for a century was quietly retired, and most shoppers didn't notice the day it disappeared. That is how the trick works. You only really see it when you look at an old wrapper next to a new one. Then, in 2012, Kraft split itself in two. The cheese and grocery business stayed in Kraft. The snacks, including Cadbury, were spun off into a new American conglomerate with an invented, made-up name, Mondelez International. The British public, which had grown up watching the Cadbury family name above the Bourneville gates, now bought their dairy milk from a company they had never heard of, run from Chicago. Think about how strange that is if you really sit with it. A 200-year-old British brand, built by a named British family on a named ethical philosophy in a named British factory with a wrapper in a colour the British company had owned for a century, is now a subsidiary of a corporation whose name was generated more or less by a marketing exercise. Mondelez is a portmanteau, blending the French word for world with the Latin for delicious. It was chosen, according to the company, to suggest delicious world. It is, to put it gently, not the kind of name a Quaker chocolatier in 1824 would have come up with. The grandeur of the name change matched the grandeur of what was happening underneath it. A heritage brand had become a unit of inventory inside a global snacks portfolio. And even the name on the new parent company's door admitted as much. In 2015, the Cadbury Creme Egg arrived in the shops with one small change that the company did not exactly broadcast. The shell of the egg, which for decades had been made of Cadbury dairy milk chocolate, was switched to what the company described simply as a standard cocoa mix chocolate. The Easter ritual was the same. The wrapper was the same. The chocolate was a different chocolate. People noticed. Sales fell, by some accounts, by tens of millions of pounds in the year after the change. Cadbury maintained the new recipe was a minor reformulation. Shoppers, in droves, said it tasted nothing like the egg they had grown up with. Then, in November 2016, Cadbury did something that, of everything on this list, hurt the brand's identity the most. It dropped its fair trade certification for dairy milk. To understand why that mattered, you have to remember what it had meant in the first place. In 2009, the year before the Kraft takeover, Cadbury had made dairy milk fair trade certified. It was a pivotal moment for the fair trade movement in Britain. 350 million chocolate bars a year, suddenly certified, sold in every corner shop in the country. It was the kind of decision that fit perfectly with the brand's Quaker roots. The cocoa growers were being paid a guaranteed minimum, and the public could see on the front of the wrapper that Cadbury had chosen to do that. In 2016, Mondelez moved dairy milk off fair trade altogether and replaced it with its own in-house program called Cocoa Life. The Fairtrade logo was demoted from the front of the wrapper to the back, where it stayed only as a partner of Cocoa Life. The difference, beneath the marketing language, is structural. Fairtrade is a third-party certification with set minimum prices for farmers, at the time $2,000 a ton. Cocoa Life is a program designed and run by Mondelez itself, with its own promises and its own definitions, and no equivalent minimum price guarantee. Critics, including a small British Fairtrade-only producer, called it a classic Cadbury's fudge. Drop the certified ingredients, keep the logo near the product, hope nobody reads the small print. This is the part that takes a moment to land. Cadbury was founded by Quakers 200 years ago. The Cadbury family were fair trading cocoa farmers long before the word fair trade existed. The whole point of Bourneville was that ethics and chocolate belonged together, and in 2016, the company built on that foundation walked away from independent ethical certification on its most famous product in favor of a program it grades itself. And alongside all of this, quietly, in the small print on the back, the recipe drifted. Cocoa butter, the natural fat from the cocoa bean that gives proper chocolate its melt, is expensive. Vegetable fats, palm oil, shea, are cheap. They do roughly the same job of holding a bar together at a fraction of the price. Mondelez has consistently maintained that the core recipe for dairy milk has not fundamentally changed, and attributes any perceived difference to ingredient variation. But independent commentators, blind taste tests, and a decade of consumer complaint argue otherwise. Whatever you think of the current bar, the long-term picture is hard to dispute. The British dairy milk wrapper today lists, in order of weight, milk, sugar, cocoa mass, cocoa butter, vegetable fats, and emulsifiers. The American version, made by Hershey under license, doesn't even start its ingredient list with milk. The brand has become a global compromise, with what's inside the wrapper subtly varying by which factory pressed it. Step 4. Lose the plot entirely. Now, this is the point where the people who actually care about what happens to British food brands separate from the people just watching. Cadbury didn't fail because chocolate stopped being popular. Chocolate is more popular than ever. It didn't fail because someone made a better bar. Plenty have tried, but dairy milk is still everywhere. The failure here is something quieter and in many ways worse. A 200-year-old brand built on transparent ethics is now run by an American conglomerate with an invented name. A factory that was supposed to stay open closed within months of the promise being made. A famous slogan was retired. A fair trade certification was dropped. A cream eggshell was quietly switched. And every one of these decisions was justified, in its moment, on entirely reasonable commercial grounds. That is what makes it the most depressing kind of decline. It is not dramatic. It is not extinction. It is dilution. If that is the kind of investigation you want more of, subscribe to UK Food Exposed, hit the hype button, and hit like. Every hype pushes this story to thousands more people who still see the purple wrapper and remember the brand it used to be. Here is the part that nobody really likes to say out loud. We have been comparing Cadbury to a fall from grace, but we have actually been too kind to it. Cadbury's real peers are not other British chocolate makers. Its real peers are the small handful of food brands in the world that carry genuine, generational, cross-class national affection. The kind of brands countries are proud of. Heinz with its baked beans, Coca-Cola in America, Lindt in Switzerland. The kind of brand where the wrapper is more than a wrapper, where the logo carries something a marketing department cannot manufacture. Every brand in that little club, every single one, understood that when you inherit that kind of trust, the job is to keep it. Not to test how much of it you can strip out before anyone notices. Not to find out how cheaply you can make the bar before the taste changes detectably. Not to swap independent certification for an in-house program you grade yourself. The job is to do the thing the people who built the brand were doing, and to do it carefully because if you break it, you cannot put it back. The tragedy of Cadbury is not that the bar is now bad. The bar is still perfectly nice. The tragedy is that a brand which had every advantage, 200 years of trust, a beloved name, a globally famous product, an ethical heritage genuinely worth boasting about, and the most recognizable wrapper in British food, was placed into the hands of owners who treated all of that as a balance sheet. The Quaker bones are there, the Bourneville factory is there, the British public's affection for the brand somehow is still there. The thing inside the wrapper is just no longer quite the thing the wrapper has been promising. This is the blueprint on how to ruin Cadbury. Start with 200 years of unimpeachable trust. Sell the company to people who do not share its values. Break the most public promise of the takeover within a week of the deal closing. Retire the famous slogan. Drop the famous certification. Quietly swap the recipe. Keep the wrapper exactly the same so nobody quite sees it happening. And by the time anyone has noticed, the brand is owned by an American conglomerate with a name nobody can pronounce, and the chocolate inside is a globally optimized compromise. The wrapper still says Cadbury. The factory in Bourneville is still there. The purple is still the purple. But the brand the Cadbury family built is gone, and the only people who can really tell are the ones who still remember what the old bar tasted like. Truly, a great blueprint on how to ruin so much potential. A 200-year-old name hollowed out, step by step, while everyone was looking at the wrapper. If you want more investigations like this, subscribe, hit the hype button, hit like, and drop me a comment with the British brand you want us to take apart next. Demand real Cadbury, not a purple wrapper around something that just used to be.